Hi there, I'm Peter Russell from Supertax.ca. Welcome to another one of my video blogs. Today's discussion is on the tuition and education tax credit here in Canada. This is a brief and general understanding. Now, the tuition and education tax credit can be found on Schedule 1 of your T1 General Canadian Income Tax Return. Specifically, it is lines 323 and 324. It's a non-refundable tax credit which can help reduce your basic federal taxes. Now, this tax credit's a little different from other non-refundable tax credits, whereas if you can't utilize the full amount in the current year, you can carry forward to a future year, or you can transfer to a parent up to $5,000 of new tuition amounts per year. Now I have a complete example which I'm going to walk through with you at the end of this video, which will help explain this. Now, the tuition and education amount is actually made up of three components. We have the tuition amount, the educational amount, and the textbook amount. Now, qualified tuition is where you've attended a qualified university, college, or educational institution here in Canada. Now, Canada usually certifies the educational institution through the Human Resources and Skills Development Canada Department. Now, if you have attended a university outside Canada, such as in the United States or Britain, you'll be eligible to claim a tuition credit here too, as long as you've attended a full-time program and the program runs a minimum of 13 weeks in a term. Now, in situations where you've received tuition reimbursements from your company, or your parents have received reimbursements from their company, and either you or your parents have not received a taxable benefit because of this, then you cannot claim tuition paid during the year. Now, with the education amount, how this works is that for every month in the current year you attend a full-time qualified program, you would receive a tax credit of $400 per month. If the program is a part-time program, you would receive $120 per month. Now, this education amount is only allowed as long as you haven't received a grant during the year which was other than a grant for a scholarship, fellowship, or bursary, or as long as you haven't received any benefits such as free meals or lodging as part of being part of a program. Now, the textbook amount works essentially the same way as the education amount, where for every month in the year you belong to a full-time qualified program, you would receive $65 per month tax credit. For every month during the year you are part of a part-time qualified program, you would receive $20 per month. Now, as long as you meet the qualifications for the education amount, you will meet the qualifications for the textbook amount. Now, I have an example which I'm going to walk through with you where we have an individual who attends a university during the year, and he's attended the university full-time for 6 months and part-time for 2 months. And his tuition paid is $2,000, and he also has eligible carry-forward balance of $2,000. So let's go through that example. So let's go to the big board here. Tuition and education amount, as I said, is a beginning balance of $2,000. His current tuition was $2,000, and he attended full-time for 6 months and part-time for 2 months. So we calculate his education amount. Full-time 6 months times $400 is $2,400. Part-time for 2 months times $120 is $240. Now let's calculate his textbook amount. Full-time at 6 months times $65, $390. Part-time for 2 months times $20 is $40. Now let's add all this up. Adds up to $7,070. So of this $7,070, $2,000 is for old tuition and $5,070 is for new tuition. Now let's assume that this individual has taxable income of $16,000 during the year. Now everyone gets a basic exemption of $10,527 in 2011. Now because the individual has earned employment income, he also received the Canadian employment amount of $1,051. So his total non-refundable tax credits before tuition and education was $11,578. We deduct that from $16,000. He could utilize up to $44.22 of tuition and education amounts. Now, generally he'll want to use the old tuition first. So we deduct the $2,000 from $44.22, remaining amount $24.22. Now the individual can utilize $24.22 of the new tuition, $5,070. Therefore, he has used up all his taxable income. He does not have to pay federal tax because his basic exemption, Canadian employment amount, and tuition has completely wiped out any federal taxes for the year. Now, can he carry forward? Yes, he can, but he can also transfer to a parent. Now, let's assume his parents want to utilize some of his tuition. Well, he is available to transfer up to this amount, $5,000 less whatever he utilized of new tuition, which is $24.22, equals $2,578. This $2,578 could be transferred to his parent if the parents needed to utilize his tuition. Then his carry forward amount would then be reduced by a further $2,578 upon completion of his tax return. Now, when his tax return is finally completed, he would show on line 323 of Schedule 1 this amount, $24.22. His parents would show on line 324 of their tax return this amount of $25.78, which is tuition transferred from a dependent. Now this is a fairly simple example of how we would calculate the tuition and education amount, assuming an individual had a balance carried forward and had attended, say, one university with one slip. You would generally get what is called a T2202A, which would have your tuition listed, $2,000, and have a box for full-time program enrollment, which would show 6, and part-time program enrollment, which would show 2. Once again, that's called a form T2202A. Okay. That's about it for tuition and education tax credits here in Canada. If you have any further questions, please feel free to send me an email at peter@Supertax.ca, or you can leave a note below. Thank you very much for listening. Take care.